My wife Charlotte filed for divorce. The reason I wouldn't let her deadbeat brother move into my parents' old brownstone in Brooklyn. I signed the papers right there. 2 hours later, I had 23 missed calls. The calls were from Charlotte, her mother, and a couple of numbers I recognized from the country club in Greenwich. I stood in our Manhattan apartment kitchen, the one with white cabinets and the expensive coffee machine I never figured out, and watched my phone light up, then go still. I poured plain coffee from a battered percolator I kept from my 20s. It hissed like an old friend. I took my mug to the window and looked at the East River gray and flat in the April light. I thought about the brownstone, Park Slope, tree-lined street. My parents bought it in the late 70s when Park Slope still had rough edges, when a brownstone didn't mean investment so much as needs work. My father sanded every banister with his hands. My mother baked bread on Sundays and set it on the windowsill to cool. After they passed first Dad, then Mom, the house came to me. Separate property, my lawyer had said when I got married. Inherited, mine alone. We recorded it. It was in writing. A simple fact like my father's name carved inside the hall closet door. I never liked big speeches. I fix things, or I try. I was a contractor for years. Then I got a city job inspecting buildings, which I liked because I knew what I was looking at, and people were polite. You learn to tell if a handrail will hold by the sound it makes when you knock it. That same instinct kicks in with people too. After a while, you can hear the rattle where a story doesn't line up. For a long time, I thought Charlotte was solid. She had this easy way of leaning on the counter, talking with her hands, laughing at my corny jokes. She worked in PR. She liked a clean aesthetic, which is what she called our white sofa, that I was never allowed to sit on after mowing the lawn. She grew up in Greenwich in a big house that whispered about money, but smelled like fear. Her father lost his job in 2008 and never really came back from it. Her mother learned 3 new smile styles that year: hopeful, worried, and you're ruining this for me. The Davises kept going to the club, kept the cars, kept the private school for Charlotte's brother Grant, because as her mother liked to say, presentation is capital. We are the Davis Family Inc. That's what she called them. Davis Family Inc. I had never heard a mother call her family a corporation. The first time I laughed. Then I realized she meant it. She kept a spreadsheet of family help on her phone. She tracked loans like it was a bonus season. The numbers were never in the black. When I met them, they were pleasant. The father golfing, the mother showing me the house like a realtor. Grant 2 years younger than me with a wink that looked like a practice move. He talked about ideas. Tech this, startup that. We're scaling, he'd say, but nothing ever got big. He had the soft hands of a man who'd never carried a ladder. I did what a lot of men do. I tried to be decent. I covered dinners. I paid when the AC broke in their Greenwich house and there was a heat wave. I helped Grant bridge a short-term cash crunch more than once. It felt like handing a stranger your wallet to hold while he explained how grateful he would be later. The first time I believed he would pay it back. The third time I didn't. I did it anyway because I loved Charlotte and because it felt easier than saying no. That's how it starts. You become an ATM, except nobody checks the balance for you. They just press your buttons and wait for the cash to appear. The receipt is a blank stare. The Mustang was the part that cut deep. A 1968 Mustang Fastback. Candy apple red. My father rebuilt it with me when I was 16. We kept it in a storage garage off 4th Avenue under a canvas cover that smelled like motor oil and history. We drove it on fall Saturdays, slow around Prospect Park windows, down radio low. After he died, I'd start it once a month to keep the engine honest. It was the only thing in my life I never used to make someone else feel better. I didn't take it to weddings. I didn't lend it to friends. It was mine in a childlike way. It made a sound like a promise when you turned the key. 2 years back, when Charlotte's mother had some kind of medical scare and the club dues were overdue and the roof in Greenwich needed a patch, Charlotte came to me with that trembling lip she used when she wanted something and also wanted to look like the wind had pushed her there. "We'll be fine," she said. "We just need to make it through the quarter. Dad's consulting is about to pop. Grant's app is about to launch. It's a perfect storm." I said we could help a little. We went over numbers. Then she brought up the Mustang. "Could we sell it?" she asked softly, like she was asking about donating an old couch. "Absolutely not," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't say anything mean. I just said no, and my hands shook. She cried that night. She said I cared more about a car than I cared about her family. She slept in the guest room. In the morning, she made coffee and smiled like we had both been crazy. She apologized. We moved on. Months later, when my back went out and I was on the couch with a heating pad, a tow truck pulled up outside the storage garage. I watched from the car. I saw the taillights of my father's car disappear into traffic. Charlotte had a bill of sale. She said we needed liquidity. She said she had spoken to my mother before she passed, and my mother would have wanted us to be flexible. I called the guy who bought the car. The title had my name on it. I could have made a mess. I didn't. I stood on the sidewalk in Park Slope with a knot in my throat so big I couldn't swallow. I let it go because I thought marriages require that sometimes. You let go of things to keep the center whole. I learned later the money went straight to Grant's bridge round. The app never launched. He had a new idea by Christmas. So when Charlotte filed for divorce over the Brownstone for not letting Grant move into the garden apartment just for 6 months, which is how everyone who wants a permanent situation starts that sentence, I felt something in me lock into place. The Brownstone is separate property. We had it recorded and notarized. I kept up the taxes. It was my parents' house. My name is carved inside the hall closet. My father's hands shine those banisters. I was not going to hand it over to Davis Family Inc., like it was just another pot of soup they could keep ladling from. I signed the divorce papers in a UPS store in Midtown because that's where the notary was and because I was done performing. The guy behind the counter had a Yankees cap and didn't look impressed at all. He stamped I signed. I slid the papers back into the envelope. I felt lighter and also like I'd been shot in the stomach. Back at the apartment, my phone buzzed across the counter. 23 missed calls. 2 voicemails from Charlotte's mother that were really one long scold broken into 2 parts by the limits of voicemail length. One from Charlotte. I pressed play and turned the phone face down, listening like it was a radio call from the past. Ethan, call me. Call me now. This isn't how we do this. You're being emotional. We need to discuss the Brownstone situation like adults. There are other options. You're being dramatic. Call me. I didn't call right then. I showered. I put on a clean shirt. I ate 2 slices of leftover pizza standing by the sink, which is how a lot of married men secretly eat. Then I called my lawyer, a straight-talking woman named Sandra, who once told me, if you feel like you're being robbed in slow motion, you probably are. Did you sign? She asked. Yeah, good, sit tight. They'll come hard. Remember the Brownstone is separate property. They'll try to fog your brain with words like community and shared legacy. They'll try to tie it to everything else. It's not tied. It's a pier on its own. Keep it that way. What about everything else? I asked. We'll be fair, she said, but we're not underwriting the Davis family's lifestyle. After lunch, I picked up the phone and called Charlotte back. This is where the re-hook starts, if you want to call it that. It didn't feel like a movie beat. It felt like waking up after a nap you didn't mean to take and remembering the stove is on. She answered on the first ring. Ethan, thank God. You left me 23 missed calls, I said. That's either love or panic. Don't be cruel, she said. I'm past cruel, I said. I'm practical. Okay, she said, switching to her PR tone. Let's be practical. The Brownstone can be a point of leverage. We could package it with the other assets. We can make the numbers work. Grant could pay rent, obviously. It would be formalized. No, I said. He's not moving in. He's not moving near it. He can rent in Sunset Park like everyone else who finds himself at 35 without a plan. You're punishing me through my family, she said. No, I said, I've been punished by your family for 6 years, and I finally put the lid on the jar. She exhaled like I just made her late for a flight. You sound like my mother, she said. You sound small. I felt the heat rise in my neck. Then I remembered the spreadsheet in the soft hands and my father sanding the banister for hours until the wood felt like a palm. I kept my voice level. Speaking of practical, I said, I'm calling in the $250,000 loan. Silence. What she said, but she heard me. The wire transfers to your family, the checks to grant the credit card payoffs you begged me to make right before the holidays, so your father wouldn't have to look at the statements. It totals $250,000. I'm calling the loan. That was a gift, she said. No, I said. I told you in writing the last time that it was a loan. You replied with a heart emoji, and of course, I have the text. Sandra has the text now too. If you want to argue about whether married people can loan each other money, fine. But I'm not loaning it to you. I loaned it to Davis Family Inc. You were the officer of that company. You made the requests. Consider this a demand letter. You're insane, she said, but her voice wobbled. I'm very sane, I said, and tired, and I want the money back. From there, the conversation went the way these conversations go. She told me I was heartless. I told her I was finally growing a spine. She hung up. Then she called back. Then she texted, let's be adults. Then her mother called and left a voicemail about breach of trust, almost like she was trying out legal language for the first time and enjoying the taste. That night I slept at the Brownstone. The habit had been to keep the garden apartment rented, but it was empty that month. I lay on the old sofa. The city air moved through the windows the way it always did, soft with a little grit. I could almost hear my parents in the kitchen. It felt like I had put my back against something that would not move. Over the next week, we began the slow dance. Lawyers emailed. We listed assets. There weren't as many as Charlotte believed. We had savings. We had retirement accounts. We had the Manhattan apartment we leased. We had my pension. We had the set of wedding china used twice. We had the ghost of the Mustang, which had been reduced to a line on a past bank statement. Everyone wants to know where a story like this turns. Sometimes it turns when other people stop lying. In my case, it turned when I stopped lying to myself. I drove up to Greenwich to collect some boxes I had there. The house looked the same as the first day I saw it. The shingles were the same, the hydrangeas trying too hard, the white columns like props. The flag on the porch was faded. A contractor's van was out front. The roof still wasn't right. Charlotte's mother opened the door and kissed the air near my cheek. Ethan, she said, like my name was a problem she'd been told to deal with. Come in. The living room was a museum of days when things had gone well. A table with photos of a 16-year-old Charlotte in a white dress. A silver bowl from something called a chair circle. A framed poster of the club's 4th of July fireworks. Her father smiled from the sofa, thinner than I remembered, in a polo shirt one size too small. We should talk, her mother said, leading me to the kitchen. There was a spreadsheet on the counter. She turned the laptop to show me. This is the family ledger. You've always been a part of it, of course. I never agreed to be a part of any ledger, I said. I married your daughter. And our family, she said, with that smile that had no blood in it. You know how it is. We all do our part. You have been generous. It has been noted. It's not a tip jar, I said. Ethan, she said, soft, this loan thing. It's embarrassing. It's not how families operate. Maybe not yours, I said. Mine paid their debts. Mine didn't sell other people's cars. Her face hardened. That old car was a vanity project. Charlotte told me you were sentimental about it. I told her sentiment is expensive. It was my father's, I said. It was my childhood. You sold it for cash and called it efficiency. We're not the same. I left with my boxes. I drove to the Brownstone. I took a slow walk through the rooms, touching doorways, listening to the creak of floors I could identify by sound alone. I wasn't just being stubborn, I was choosing what to stand for. Something clicked into place that night. A line, not a wall. A line I wasn't going to move again. A week later, we had our first meeting with both lawyers. Sandra and I went to a midtown office with big windows and a conference table that looked like a runway. Charlotte came with a lawyer who wore a pocket square the color of a bruise. She looked good because she always did, calm, polished, hands folded on the table like she was waiting for coffee. The opening part was polite. Numbers, accounts, timelines. Then Charlotte's lawyer said with casual confidence, "The Brownstone is a marital asset. It should be evaluated in the total distribution." "No," Sandra said. "Inherited property is separate property under New York law. It was kept separate. The deed is in Ethan's name alone. The mortgage was paid off before the marriage. There were no commingled funds. It does not enter the marital pot." Charlotte's lawyer tilted his head. "We can still leverage it to reach a fair settlement on other fronts." "Attempting leverage is not the same as having leverage," Sandra said. Charlotte reached across the table with her look that always worked. "Ethan, be fair," she said. "It's a home, a place for family. The garden apartment is empty half the year. Grant could." I held up a hand. "No." And then I did the thing I was afraid to do, because once you do it, you can't go back. I slid a copy of a bank statement across the table. Sandra slid the text printout on top of it. This is the $250,000 I said. This is the demand for repayment. This is the acknowledgement. We'll take a certified check by Friday. Charlotte's face changed. It's a strange thing to watch a person try to hold three masks on with one hand. You wouldn't, she said. I am, I said. And here's the rest. The Brownstone stays mine. No claims, no liens, no future requests to house your family. And you sign a non-contact agreement regarding the Brownstone. That means you and anyone you designate won't attempt contact with me. There won't show up there, and won't use intermediaries to ask for access housing or favors related to the property. If you breach it, the penalty is automatic and not cheap. That's outrageous, the Pocket Square man said. You're trying to muzzle our client's family life. I'm putting a fence up, I said. You can garden in your yard all you want. You can't come over and pick my tomatoes. Sandra added, we are willing to be generous on other fronts. We'll do a buyout of certain assets. We'll settle alimony fair to length of marriage and income. We'll even go above standard on the cash payout because Ethan wants to move on. But the Brownstone is not for sale, not for rent, and not a guest room for her brother. You can't dictate who I talk to, Charlotte said sharp now. You can't control my life. I'm not, I said. I'm controlling my doorbell. We took a break. I walked to the window and looked down at Park Avenue. Taxis slid like coins on a table. I remembered being 20 and believing money solved everything. Money solves the money part. The rest is about lines you draw with a pencil the first time and a chisel the next. When we came back, Charlotte started with tears. You're punishing me for the Mustang, she said. I'm asking you to admit what it was, I said. You sold something that wasn't yours to sell something you knew meant the world to me, and you told yourself a story about it. You turned me into a bad guy for caring about it. You broke trust. Then you asked for more. She pressed her lips together. Then she looked at her lawyer and did that silent nod that means, let's try the other play. He leaned forward. We'd like to see a settlement proposal, he said, including a cash component that recognizes Mrs. Hayes' contributions. Sandra slid a folder across the table. Inside was a number. It was generous enough to be called gracious and not so generous that I would hate myself. It came with a page for the non-contact agreement and a page that spelled out the Brownstone status in big simple language. It also had a line I'd insisted on right under assets. The 1968 Mustang Fastback VN listed sold on date without Ethan Hayes' consent, proceeds directed to accounts ending in numbers tied to Grant Davis, referred to hereafter as the Mustang sale. I didn't have to include that line. Sandra told me it wouldn't change the math, but I wanted it in writing. I wanted it said out loud. I wanted the room to know. What is this? Charlotte asked, pointing at the line. It's the truth, I said. Her lawyer lowered his eyes. Is this accurate? Charlotte's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like I'd brought a stranger into her house. Her mother had told her presentation was capital. She had no presentation for this. She went quiet, and in that quiet I heard every time I'd swallowed a no. This is the part that might sound cruel if you've never had someone poke a hole in your life and call it airflow. I didn't crow. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't enjoy the look on her face. I just let it sit. A man should not have to carve his father's name twice because someone wanted to pay off a credit card. We worked the numbers. We did the lawyer dance. Then came the final scene. We met at Sandra's office because it was neutral and had better snacks. Two paralegals wheeled in stacks of paper like it was a buffet. I signed. Charlotte signed. Cameras were off. Voices were level. A notary stamped each page with that little thunk that feels like a gavel in your chest. Then Sandra slid the last document across the table. This is the Brownstone non-contact agreement, she said. We'll read it aloud. Charlotte's lawyer started to object. Sandra kept going. She read the simple, short paragraphs that said Charlotte would have no claim on the Brownstone now or later, that she would not set foot on the property without written consent, that she would not ask and her family would not ask and she would not send anyone to ask, that any money paid today included consideration for this, and then Sandra read the part that mattered most to me. In exchange for the above, Ethan Hayes authorizes a cash settlement to Charlotte Hayes in the amount of number which is notably higher than the statutory guideline amount, for the express purpose of achieving a clean break, protecting the integrity and legacy of the Brownstone, and avoiding further entanglement with the Davis family's financial needs or claims. I expected drama. I expected a scene. Instead, I got something that looked like relief. Charlotte read it and her shoulders dropped. She looked less like a wife and more like a person stepping out of tight shoes. Fine, she said. I agree, she signed. The pen made that little scratching sound. It was public enough. There were witnesses. We didn't need an audience at the club. I looked at the window and felt my father's hand on the banister again, that steady pressure that means you won't fall if you hold on. We wrapped up. The checks were cut. Receipts were signed. The last envelope, the one with the $250 repayment, slid across to Sandra and then to me. It was cashier's checks, not as satisfying as cash, but more honest. I put them in my inside jacket pocket and felt the weight like a small, square truth. Charlotte stood. She picked up her purse. She looked at me in that way people do when they are trying to assemble a final sentence that will fix the last 6 years in 12 words. She didn't find it. She said, "You'll be alone in that house." I was alone there before I said, in a good way. We left it at that. Some stories end with fireworks. Mine ended with doors closing quietly. I walked out into the Midtown wind and headed for the subway. I took the F train to 7th Avenue and came up into the plain light of Park Slope. I walked the long block to the Brownstone. The trees were leafing out. A kid on a scooter shot past me and laughed. I put my key in the door and stepped inside. I took a long, slow tour like people do at museums when they love something. I ran my hand along the banister. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the window where my mother used to cool bread. I opened the hall closet and touched the carved letters, DH plus RH, my father and mother. I said their names out loud and nobody told me to hurry. In the weeks that followed, I fixed small things. A loose hinge, a hairline crack in the plaster. I oiled the front door until it swung like it had confidence. I bought a used beat-up toolbox at a yard sale and set it on the second step the way Dad used to. I sat on the stoop in the evening and nodded to neighbors I'd known for 20 years, the ones who never asked for money but brought you soup when you had the flu. I thought about legacy. The word gets used a lot when people want to be remembered. What I learned is simpler. Legacy isn't the applause. It's the thing that stands when other people would prefer it sit. It's the brownstone yes, but it's also the part of me that said no when no was the right answer. It's a boundary, and boundaries are not cages. They're fences around gardens you promised to keep. I thought about Charlotte. I didn't hate her. People become who they train themselves to be. She trained herself to present well and to survive her mother's weather. She learned that other people's things were easier to sell than her own. I had helped her learn that by giving in when I should have stood up sooner. That's on me. So I stood up now. On a Saturday in June, I walked down to a car show in Red Hook. It was one of those small neighborhood shows with folding chairs and hot dogs that taste right because you're outside. A man had a '68 fastback green instead of red with the same soft growl. I asked if I could sit in it. He nodded. I put my hands on the wheel and closed my eyes and heard the old sound. I cried in a quiet way that felt like oil slipping through an engine cleaning things. After that, I didn't try to replace the Mustang. Some things you don't replace. You carry the shape of them, and when you walk through doorways, you feel them brush the sides and you remember where you've been. I bought a good used pickup instead, the kind that doesn't complain. I drove it to the lumber yard and brought home a stack of cedar and built window boxes for the Brownstone. I planted geraniums like my mother did, red as brake lights. One evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Charlotte. No hearts, no exclamation points. Just I saw a picture of the house. The flowers look nice. I'm sorry about the Mustang. I know it doesn't fix anything. I stared at the screen. Then I typed, "Thank you. Take care of yourself." She wrote back, "I will." I believe her. I also believe I won't be getting a knock at the Brownstone door asking for rent just for 6 months. I won't be asked to save a lifestyle that was never mine to save. If a problem arises, it won't be my problem unless I choose it. That's freedom, sure. But more than that, it's respect for the past. A man can protect his father's banister and still open his door to good people. It's not selfish, it's stewardship. A week later, I had Sandra over for coffee to sign one last form. She asked how I was. Better, I said, lighter. Not happy all the time, but honest. We stood in the hallway before she left. She ran her fingers along the carved letters in the closet and smiled. "You did right by them," she said. I nodded. I did right by me, too. Now, sometimes on Sunday mornings, I sit on the stoop with a cup of coffee and read the paper like my father did. Kids run by, people walk their dogs. The sky over the brownstones is that city rectangle of blue you only get between row houses. I hear a far-off car that might be a Mustang, and I let it pass. I don't need to chase it. I'm home. If you're reading this and something in your life feels like that emptying bank machine, if you're tired of being leveraged by people who never say thank you, let me say this. Don't be afraid to draw your own line. You don't have to shout. You can set it down with a pencil first. Then you can go over it with ink. Then if you have to, you can carve it into the wood. Protect your own brownstone, whatever it is. Keep the banister polished. Keep the door oiled. Keep the garden yours. And when somebody tells you presentation is capital, remember that truth is too. And if you ever sit alone with a cup of coffee thinking about what's yours to protect, start there.